satisfaction, meaning that we are satisfied that our work up to and through step 5 is complete, thorough, that we know what we're doing. This isn't a matter of I don't know, I don't understand anymore. We're getting clear, we know what willingness is now. Beginning to find some humility. All this kind of stuff is going on, and we know it. It's not because somebody else is telling us we're honest. We're no longer asking other people to verify our honesty for us, all those kind of things. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. We talked a lot about willingness last week, how it's okay to be unwilling, as long as we are then willing to do something about the unwillingness that we find. And that is, at every step, wherever we get stuck, it's always going to be willingness that will get us unstuck, and how we need to be into action, on the things that we find in ourselves, character defects, and shortcomings, all that kind of stuff. So it says, are we now means here in the present moment, ready. Ready means what? Prepared, willing, to let, permit God to remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable. A lot of us get stuck, especially, we've been around AA for a while and got into a whole lot of the other kind of things that go on. See, we're not ready to let God do anything. We're ready to work on them ourselves. We're going to deal with it, and we're going to get in touch with it, and we're going to discuss it, and we're going to this it, and we're going to massage it, and we're going to hug it, and we're going to do all these things, but we're not ready to let God remove it. And see, so this is a very clear kind of thing, and sometimes getting ready, being willing and ready to let God remove something from us, it can be kind of an arduous process. And those of us who have started to make a list and to put these things down, the character defects and the shortcomings that come out of them, I hope you're beginning to see that. See that this is not some Pollyanna, well, I'm suddenly rendered white as snow kind of step that occurs. Oh, now I'm saved, now I can walk on water, now I'm pure, now I'll make no mistakes, now I'm perfect. It's not like that. We need to face up to whatever we got to face up to. So we don't all have the same things in the same degrees. And whatever degrees you got them in, that's where your point of view is going to be. So are you beginning to see that at this point, sponsors and discussions and all that are all good, but this whole matter of being honest with ourselves, is what this is all about. The degree of responsibility necessary. No honesty with ourselves, no growth, stuck, all that kind of stuff. It's like, nobody else can take your inventory for you. Nobody else knows your heart and your mind except you and a power greater than you. Everybody getting real clear about that as you look at these things. Okay, so are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? See, so one other thing about that is our agendas on, the whole process of spiritual growth need to be thrown out the window. See, it's going to be God's agenda. See, haven't you all had an agenda somewhere along the line? I think we all have, sure. And it makes some sense to have one until you realize you're powerless. See, and then our own agendas about things don't make much sense at all, even once you understand them. Okay, so can he now? So notice that we see that word now a couple of times in this paragraph. Now, can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. And so that is the action that you take when you find that you're unwilling. Okay, so first the honesty is necessary to admit what the character defect is. And then we have to determine honestly face whether we're willing or whether we're unwilling. If we are willing, there is further action to take, called step 7. If we're unwilling, then there's a prayer right there, an action to take. So we have to be willing, to pursue willingness. Now at some of the step 6 stuff that I found, especially sexual stuff, money stuff, some security stuff, and in order to be honest with myself, I had to start backing up. And I would get 16 willings away, from being willing. literally put them down on a piece of paper, see, and start asking myself, am I willing? No way. Am I willing to be willing? No way. Am I willing to be willing to be willing? No way. Am I willing to be willing to be willing to be willing? No way. See? And I just kept backing up until I found a place where I could be willing to seek some willingness, and that's where I would start. See? And see, that's perfectly, it works fine. See, just find out exactly where you are in terms of willingness. See? Because the real important thing here is that we be willing to grow, and if we're not doing anything, then we're not growing. Okay? Now, there's no such thing as status quo, as you'll see if we go further on through this chapter. See, this is, we're either growing or we're shrinking. So you're going to start seeing the word shrink begin to appear. See, there's nothing called laurels. See, have you tried to sit on your laurels yet? Anybody? See, most of us try that. See, and if you notice how they disappear immediately when you sit on them, boom. See, suddenly they're gone. Okay. See, so willingness, see, is indispensable. And what you'll see as we go all through the rest of the steps, see, is willingness is necessary.
It's so hard because in step 3, you know, made the decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. And that was the hardest part for me right there with that will. And I haven't really struggled with that for a long time. And then now again, the will. Now I'm supposed to be willing or figure out whether I'm willing or not willing. And part of me is willing, part of me isn't willing. And what degree is willing? It's so confusing.
Sure. Well, see, that's what step 6 is about, is to begin to look at, see, where you're willing. See, when you say a part of me is willing and a part of me is not willing, see, you really don't know what the problem is at that point. See, you don't know what, see, it's probably about clinging to something you don't want to let go of. See, and that's what you need to begin to identify. Does that make sense? See, when you say a part of me, what part? See, what part ain't willing? See, where is the unwillingness coming from? And we all need to get over the idea that unwillingness is bad. See, do you have an idea that unwillingness is bad?
Yes.
See, unwilling. See, we need to begin to look at unwillingness simply as a shortcoming. Okay, see, and to be honest about it wherever we find it. See, to stop beating ourselves up about that. See, if you're unwilling, great. Just all you got to do is admit to yourself and to God as you understand Him that you're unwilling. Okay, see, and then instead of beating yourself up and getting all weirded out about it, so you start praying for willingness. Okay, see, but you can't take that kind of action until we can all, see, get over this idea that finding unwillingness is a bad thing. See, and beating ourselves up about it. See, most of that kind of attitude that I found in myself comes out of this perfectionism sort of place that I've always lived in all my life. Anybody had that? Anybody find that on your shortcomings list? Trying to be perfect. Afraid to make mistakes. Oh God, what if I screw up? All that kind of stuff. So, if you remember when we were reading step 6 last week, Bill talked about how this step is a brand new venture into open-mindedness for us. Part of being open-minded, see, is to cease, see, this whole thing of being afraid to find what you find, and see, being afraid to admit our own unwillingness, see, and all that kind of stuff. Judging what we find as good and bad and right and wrong instead of doing something about it. See, these are all, see, pretty new ideas to most of us. See, and if you have the sense, sort of like Liz was talking about, kind of like getting on a bicycle for the first time and it's pretty wobbly, okay, you're not real clear about it all, that's okay. Just like anything else that you do for a while, you get better at it. So as long as you put this stuff into practice. Remember, Bill talked about doing this repeatedly, stay on the character defects and the things that we find in ourselves. So, I just want everybody to, if you're suffering from, this hard on yourself in terms of judging yourself, just begin to look at that as a shortcoming. And see if you can be willing to ask God to remove that one maybe first. Okay? If you're somebody who beats yourself up a lot, for failing or not being perfect or good or anything See if you can be willing to ask God to remove that one. See, immediately. See, and that'll give you a little room and a little freedom to maneuver down the rest of the steps here, and everything else will start making some more sense. There's nothing in here about perfection. Okay, this is all about, see, just being human, facing whatever we got to face, see, and then beginning simply to do something about it. Practice spiritual principles. Okay, now one of the things we did last week is say that we or some of us were going to put down steps, character defects and shortcomings on a piece of paper. Anybody do that? Okay. Now, anybody find anything you want to share? Do you learn anything that might be of service to anybody else? Okay, what I'd like to suggest is that something that you can notice about these kind of things is we're still not too open about talking about them in front of other people. Okay, see, and you might ask yourself if that limits your freedom some. Okay, what you find, see, if you're still, in a place where it's not okay to talk about it in front of other folks, see, that's okay, but ask yourself, is that a limitation? Is that some bondage of self still operating in your life? See, so whatever you find on step 6, I'd like to really strongly suggest that you go over that with your sponsor or with somebody else program of Alcoholics Anonymous who knows what they're doing. Okay. So, especially if you're learning things that you didn't see clearly when you did step 5. Okay. Yeah, Joe.
You're talking about anything that, even if we thought of something like defect or shortcoming? Okay. I relate to an incident just now, is how impatient I am. Okay. I asked Bill to give me a ride, and I like to be on time, and he's showing up late, so I'm going to be late. See, and that's why I don't depend on other people. See, and I get real impatient and get real, what do you call it? Irritable in this. I mean, very much so, because I'm one of those that like to be early and be on time. I don't like being late, and that isn't what. And I know that has nothing to do with him. It had to do with me.
Right.
And that, sometimes it gets to me, but and I have to go. It ain't his fault. I got to go. It ain't his fault, and I got to ask God to help me because I have a hard time with it still, and it has nothing to do with it. That's with anybody. I don't like depending on people. See, that's a biggie for me. I just don't depend on people. Like the book tells me, I can't trust anyone. I still don't trust anyone. So I don't know if that helps. But that's what I see. I have to ask for that willingness to learn that things happen in its own time, the way it's supposed to. I have a hard time with it.
Something I was running into really great depth as I was setting up checks where I would catch myself being prideful, etc., etc., etc. And I would literally not be able to get through 3 minutes, 5 minutes of the day without catching myself in one of these things. At one point I thought, all I got to do is tape my mouth shut and never say another word, and I could live a program of scrupulous honesty because I couldn't say good morning without lying to somebody. And then, as I pursued it further with myself, I began to realize that I was setting up these things as entertainment, almost for myself. Not as detecting a character defect, realizing it's there and praying to be rid of it, but just as a game.
Great.
No, I didn't write it all down.
Just become Willie.
I got a lot on pride. Thinking of it, that with the definition, too high an opinion of one's importance or superiority. And that really made me think of a lot more things as far as striving, the drive for success at where I work, and my ambition towards my job. And trying to play God getting everyone to help me and do things for me. Bringing that little sign for me. And very rebellious and non-conformist, that's also.
That's dynamite. Do you see any contradiction in any of that stuff? Yeah, see, that's one of the weird things that I found in step 6 is that my pride would have me do things that were contradictory. And see, I found a lot of contradictory kind of things that came out of all of the character defects. And I had seen a lot of that on my 4th step when I did the fear inventory. I saw how many of those fears were contradictory. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of this, fear of that. The fear of change, but fear of being bored and no change. All that various stuff, see, that goes on. And I really began to see why I've been so wishy-washy and indecisive and paralyzed a lot in my life. So, when stuff starts happening, here come all these contradictory things. People say, well, weigh the pros and the cons. I said, Jesus Christ. We got to tank on both sides. I never really understood that until I really began to look into these kind of things. I began to understand, what a shortcoming is, how character defect works, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it helps to see it under something from, and then you can see it under other things. In doing the 5th step, the pride thing didn't stick out that much as it did doing this. That's what you do the 5th step with me. And when we wrote down those shortcomings last week on the side of pride, it really caused me a lot of grief, seeing some things that I hadn't seen before. It's quite funny. The idea of not listening is, I know it's always been a problem for me, but I never saw it as connected with pride. And I realized before I used to think I didn't listen, or I would fill in people's sentences for them or interrupt them because I thought I was on the same wavelength with it, and that made me feel really good, like our minds are meshing and this is really neat having a high-powered conversation. When in fact, I'm just literally finishing their thinking and not respecting that they have their own thoughts and probably going to say something different than I think they're going to say. So, although I've been trying to learn to be a better listener all my life and not talk so much, I never saw it quite so clearly as one thing.
It's amazing how many of your selfless acts you can't wait to tell somebody about. How many of your selfless acts you can't wait to tell somebody about.
I was to do something with people that I thought was one of the good things, and later found out that it really was because of my own selfishness and self-centeredness. And I tell people, well, now I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if it was me, that's what, and so I was very, very artfully lead them or try and direct them the way I wanted to, and it was real difficult for me to see that one. Because I really believed it was something that I was doing that was real good, and I had to look real deep before I could see that I really did. I wanted a payback for all that, for all of that good advice and all of that nice type of person that I thought I was. Under the character defect of lust, I think I have exhibited everything that you can possibly imagine. Just stealing and cheating and, and all of it was for and that was what the basis of it was. But I didn't want to think that was the kind of person I was. And I was. I had jealousy, which is something I would never admit even to myself. I mean, just, put me to a place where I was almost homicidal before I could finally really get in touch with just what was going on and own that and then, be willing to do something about that. And like you say, sometimes I was afraid if I prayed about that, that I'd end up celibate for the rest of my life. And I wasn't sure that I was ready to do that yet.
Right.
So it was really, I struggle with it some days too today, but it's not as painful as it used to. When Liz was talking, I was thinking of, usually when character defect, when I keep exhibiting it enough and it causes me enough pain, then I become a little bit more willing. You know, when my lying gets me in enough trouble, when my whatever gets me in enough trouble, then I become a little bit more willing. I wish I could become more willing before I have to go through all that stuff, but maybe I remember now today to pray more often than I used to before. Before I used to just let experience beat me up before I became willing enough. And then I wouldn't own a lot of those things. You know, I'd say, well, I could see them real easily in everybody, but I could never see them in myself. And then I found out that if I saw them in myself, I might have to do something about it. That's even worse. Then I'd have to really work. But again, I always thought it was me that had to do it all. I never really, even though I knew God had something to do with all that, I thought the character defects was something I had to handle, you know, because that was my part. So it's a lot easier for me today because I know that I can't do it by myself. But they're painless, I'll tell you.
Is everybody hopefully beginning to get the sense that these steps can take some of the pressure off of you? That you really can rely on God, and that real results and change can come about based simply on your willingness and your honesty, and asking God for the power to do whatever needs to be done in practice. Real results can happen. It took a lot of weight off of me to realize that.
For a long time, since when I started this big book study, see, I was willing to go to any lengths to stay sober, but I wasn't real willing to go to any big book studies or 12 and 12 because of shame and guilt also, so the inability to read. So that kind of kept me out, but when she mentioned the tapes, Betty said, there's a golden opportunity, I don't have to read anything. He was to find out that I had to do some writing, which I can't do real. See, that's something I had to work on. But today, you know, for me, even a long time getting into 6 and 7 with my sponsor, is 4 or 5 was a breeze to me. But 6 and 7, that's a mother. Because now I got to look at really who I am. That's just bringing a lot of stuff to the surface, the defects, characters, shortcomings, and all my crap that I lived in. Now I got to work on changing all that. And that's what's hard about 6 and 7 for me. It's getting real. Getting really into the program, really letting God handle it, no matter what happens here. And it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's got a lot better.
Okay. My experience with most people that I work with is that, hi Shirley. Building the foundation, steps 1 through 5, makes it possible for us to start taking this kind of a look. See, at step 6, see that the kind of stuff we're talking about in this meeting, it very seldom comes up on people's gift steps. We're more dealing with resentments and selfishness and, you know, all the various junk. See, that's got the windshield covered over, so you get your windshield clean. See, and suddenly you can see what road you're really on. You go, whoa, this is what's really here.
You say it doesn't normally come up with this stuff?
Generally not.
Oh, I thought it was supposed to.
Not this kind of stuff. It does for some people, but not for others. So,
Depends how you
if you're finding, see, that you have at this point some, you know, a little clearer point of view of what this is all about, see, that's some pretty clear evidence that, you know, the first 5 steps have given you a foundation. If you're not running like hell, see, that's some pretty clear evidence. See, that something's going on here. See, most of us have been running from this stuff all, you know, talk about it intellectually, see, but to actually look and go, boom, see, this is me, this is where I'm coming from. That's just one other thing, you know, part of the change in attitude for most of us is that we stop worrying so much about where we're going, see, being a lot more careful about where we're coming from, see, which is this stuff. One more thing is that you'll see as we go through now the remainder of the into action steps, how all of this ties together. Step 6 and step 7 and step 8 and step 9 have a lot to do with 6 and 7. See, and 10, 11, and 12 have a whole lot to do with those. See, it's all about grasping things, and you'll see them now. They're going to begin to repeat things over and over and over as we go through the remainder of the book. Just like there were threads that they beat on all the way through the first half of the book. See, there are some things that are going to start occurring here in chapter 6 and go through all the remainder of the chapters over and over and over and over again. Just some simple things that they want to make clear, see, which are the foundation of the whole thing. Starting with, see, if we can answer to our satisfaction, which is honesty, then willingness is indispensable. See, we're simply starting to walk down a path. So try to be just as open-minded and as willing as you can be. Okay, we're going to get into step 7 now, which is the next paragraph. And you notice once again we only find one paragraph. See, on the 7th step. See, and step 7 literally, see, is an action. Okay, but it's a very important action. It says, when ready. Okay, it's like, see, we don't go out and go to work till we're ready. We don't eat dinner until dinner's ready. We don't take a bath or shower until the water's ready. You know, there's a lot of things in life where you got to be ready before you can do something. Okay, step 7 is when ready. So I hope you're beginning to see the degree of honesty, the responsibility involved here. Okay, it says when ready we say. So once again, see, say means what? Speak. Remember step 3? Taking the prayer, voicing it without reservation. So preferably with somebody at step 3. This one there's no instruction saying to do it with somebody, see, but I would strongly suggest that you do it with your sponsor or whoever you're working with. Okay, so when ready we say something like this. Okay, my Creator. Everybody's pretty clear about your concept of God at this point. Does anybody find that your ideas about God are changing as a result of doing step 1 through 5? Beginning to happen? Okay, good. Okay, I. Who's the I? See, is this the same I that made the offer in step 3?
No.
Hopefully not, right? See, hopefully with a little change of some openness, a foundation of willingness, honesty, humility, see all that. Hopefully this I, see, has done steps 1 through 5. See, is now ready to do step 7. So it's taking an honest look. See, that's the I at this point. See, I am now. What does now mean? Now, present moment, willing. All right, now here you are. See, saying this prayer to who? See, what if you're lying? See, what if you never really became ready? See, what if you never really honestly examined willingness? What if you never really looked at your character defects, have no real understanding what they are, what the shortcomings are? What good is this prayer going to do?
Just a lot of words there.
Just, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Don't mean shit.
Keep coming back, it works. See, just one more, by rote kind of thing. Okay, see, the words in the prayers in the book mean something. See, very specific. So, who's the, see, you know what God is, who's the I, and hopefully this I is a little different from the I that on page 63 that took the 3rd step. See, this I has grown a little. Okay, I am now willing, see, that you should have how much? Do you mean it? See, do you mean it?
That's a heavy word.
Yeah. See, what are the next 3 words?
All of me.
Good and bad. Good and bad. Not just the bad, not just the good. See? All of it. See? Do you mean it? See, that's where you got to be honest with yourself. See, doesn't this sound a hell of a lot like step 3? See, in a little more boom kind of form. Okay, so either we are willing or we're not. See, we're either ready or we're not ready. All means all. Good and bad means good and bad. Okay, it means exactly what it says. Okay, I pray, and this is a prayer, so it's called 7-step prayer, if you're not familiar with that, that you, see, now remove. What does remove mean? To take away, to get rid of. See, from me, every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Okay, now think just for a minute about if you have your 6-step list here, take a look at it. Just pick it up and take a look at it. The defects and the shortcomings that you've begun to observe in yourself. See, and ask yourself, will these things, see, get in the way of me, see, being of service to other people in Alcoholics Anonymous? See, will they get in the way of me being of service in my family and relationships, marriages? See, will they get in the way of me in my relationships with my kids? See, will they get in the way of me being a productive, of service, kind of spiritually awakened person in the marketplace wherever you do your job? See, will they get in the way of service while you're driving down the road? See, or when you're in the supermarket? See, are these things going to literally stand in the way, see, of you, see, if you're really seeking, see, to bring yourself to a point where you're of maximum service to God and the people about you? See, will they stop you from doing that? See, and for how long? That's what we all need to be, really clear about. See, we're asking God to remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Now, that's a pretty heavy-duty prayer, isn't it? Okay, see, now remember, unwillingness is bad? No. Unwillingness is okay. See, so if you find that you got some unwillingness, you can still do the 7th step. See, even with whatever unwillingness you find. Because the unwillingness is what you'll be asking God to remove at this point on those particular things. See, but the matter of being honest with yourself and with God as you understand Him, see, is very important. See, in terms of, see, this is, almost every newcomer walks into AA, and reads the steps and then, hits their knees or does whatever they do and starts asking God to remove their character defects. See, without a clue as to, what they are, what any of this is about. Okay, see, this is, we're trying to do things from a position of knowing what we're doing here. See, not a position of wishful thinking and ignorance. Does that make, is that pretty clear?
Not like we normally do?
Yeah. Not like I normally ran my whole life, okay?
Michael.
Yeah.
I thought, like on character defects, and I thought, and this is the way it worked out for me, was that they just kind of reared their ugly heads at various points in my life, and then I had to address them. And that's kind of an ongoing process. That's continuous. That, something will happen, whether it be pride or lust or greed or something like that in a specific form. And either I allow this situation, I pray for God's will, and it was right after my 5th step. And it would have been convenient for me to go ahead with what was expected, what I had always done. And I didn't, So, what I'm saying is, the way it was explained to me was that character defects, I wasn't to pick and choose. That I was to just learn from them and deal with them as I go through my regular life. Am I making any sense? You've got a real blank look on your face, Michael.
Honesty.
Well, all I'm trying to do here is make the stuff in the book clear. See, and if it's at odds with what somebody told you, then you might discuss it with whoever told you that.
So you do an actual inventory then? That's what I was supposed to have done, yeah. All the defects, right?
Well, as I told you last week, there's no instruction there in the first paragraph to make a written list. Right? So, but I did show you that there is,
Yes.
Was the suggestion in step 6 and the 12 and 12 and why. Okay, so, and see, what I found in my own experience and with most people I work with is this promotes a lot of spiritual growth in a hurry and makes everything clearer, see, to people. See, but you certainly do not have to do it. No list
Well, I
there,
wasn't.
right?
Isn't that much easier once, this idea of writing it down really makes it takes a whole lot of the guesswork out of it. Because I know I waited till he hit me in the face, and that's where all the pain came from. I just figured all I had to do was sit back and eventually it'd get taken care of, and when I go like this, I'd always see it back here. Then I'd have to deal with it, however best I could, and got to the 7-step prayer. But I think being able to write it down, my gosh, it's like, first of all, I was willing to admit there was something going on, but I didn't necessarily want it to be with me, because then that meant I had to do something, and that used to piss me off, because I was tired of that, I remember crying to somebody about how terrible it was to have to grow up, and she said, it's all that fighting you're doing, and I really was. I was fighting everything. I didn't want to say that was me. So I think this writing down is an excellent idea to kind of at least get in touch with, yeah, that's me, I see myself in that, instead of just waiting till you're walking down the street and something comes up, slaps you in the face, and you say, wait a minute, now what is this? And then you have to go to someone and say, why do I keep doing this, It's like you said, it just speeds up the process a little bit. Instead of it taking years, you might be able to start doing that. I think where I had trouble with the 7-step prayers, that I thought if I said that, then I never had to deal with it again. Like I never had to deal with, lust again, or jealousy again, or greed again, or selfishness, or whatever it was that came up. And that's not the way it worked for me. I wish it was just that simple to say. And it would just automatically be removed from me, and I never would have to deal with it again. But I think it really helps to write it. I mean, I wish I'd have known this a few years ago,
What I get out of this is, I'm going to just make it real quick, is after doing all this stuff and understanding this prayer, don't mean shit until you do the basics of the first 5 or 6 steps.
Right.
And get into this. Because this is where you're going to learn the willingness to grow as an adult. To me, this is the way I see it. I've always been a child all my life until I started doing something different. So this is kind of the way I see it. That's the way I have to apply it, the way I understand it. For me. So it's a basis of no more being a child and acting like a child. It's time to start being responsible and acting like an adult. It took time.
I think one of the hardest things for me to swallow was when my sponsor said, you just fucking need to grow up.
Hate that shit.
It was true. It's true. If you've ever read the 12, Bill talks about that. So Shrinks did a study of alcoholics back in the 40s, and their conclusion was that alcoholics were grandiose and childish at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he writes how we did resent that verdict. See? I don't know. Anybody, do you see any childishness in yourself as a result of the first 6 steps? See childishness in your thinking and wishful thinking and not based on facts and all that. See, I have a lot of that. Everything ought to be perfect all of the time. If you're not perfectly happy, then you have to be perfectly miserable. I mean, it's an incredible amount of childish kind of thinking that I have. Glad you brought that up.
Oh, I don't know
Very
really
true about it.
whether it impressed me so much as childish thinking. It just made me realize how sick I was.
Yeah.
Just the plain and the simple, because a lot of it I would hate to call childish, because I see it in 90% of the people that I work with.
That don't think right.
Yeah.
That don't make it childish.
Well, okay, if the whole world's childish, we have to redefine childish, but...
No.
One other thing I'd like to, yeah, go ahead.
My thinking always was many words always I would get people to say, and I long time I thought that was it. I'm grateful that that's the number one thing that got taken care of.
these steps where it becomes more important where we're coming from,
Yeah.
see, rather than see, who we are, see, what we're putting out, see, becomes more important than what we're getting, where we're going, plans and goals and dreams and all that selfish stuff.
That's one that I need to look at. Because I just think, yeah, I love my country. I want to live.
Can't hear you.
It is. A lot of this is painful stuff. Nobody likes facing up to it.
When a block to the 7-step prayer is just how willing am I, do I want to be useful to others too? Because that means I got to give up a lot of time, you know. I remember saying the 7-step prayer and just I forgot about the good, so I would say just take away the bad, you know. Because that's really what's bothering me right now and I don't want to do it anymore. And then, what stands in the way of my, I don't remember saying that too often, the 7-step prayer, what stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. I say it now, but I didn't used to before because I was so busy trying to take care of me that I really, I guess selfishly thought I didn't have time for anybody else, you know, and I needed to, I just didn't make that connection or just wouldn't.
Some of us, when we get into AA, we just want to charge out and upset the world, and that's a good thing. Some of us don't have any desire to do that at all. If you're finding, see, that you're somebody without much desire, see, to be of some service, see, and to work with others in AA, see, you might start to view that as a shortcoming, see, and a pretty serious one. Something to start taking a look at. Be honest with yourself about it. It's don't beat yourself up about it, but if it's something that you're beginning to be aware of, see, it's good to be aware of it, and then something really does need to be done about it. So it can be pretty serious in terms of being recovered or unrecovered.
I had a habit of running around telling people how busy I was, and so then people would say, well, we can't call on you because you're busy. And then I found out I really wasn't busy. That was totally dishonest. I just said that so that nobody would call on me. There were a lot of things I didn't want to do in the first place. You know?
Sure.
So I try not to tell them, oh, I'm so busy now.
Something that I found out is that one of the reasons, perhaps the main reason why I had stopped being willing to be of service to anybody was that I didn't have anything to offer, and I knew it. I didn't know what I was doing, and so I had to cop to that, face that. It was one of my shortcomings. My pride was really on the line, and fear and all kinds of stuff was up to be looked at on that one. See, and then what I saw is I'm going to have to learn. I don't know, fact. See, I need to learn, fact. I'm willing or I'm not willing, fact. See, and then the evidence was, see, I started doing it. See, so you might find yourself in that kind of a position. See, and if you begin to look, see, at the freedom that step 6 and 7 will give you, if you can start to look at unsolvable problems in your life in terms of character defects and shortcomings, instead of in terms of right and wrong, good and bad, I'm a bitch, I'm an asshole, I'm this, I'm that, I'm so stupid. See, all the judgments that we put on ourselves. See, even some serious stuff. I remember that they talked on page 58 about grave mental and emotional disorders. See, that don't seem to respond in an alcoholic in medicine and psychiatry and normal modes of treatment. See, you might start looking at those as character defects and shortcomings. Start to look at stuff like paranoia and deep-seated fears and depressions and whatever you got, if you got that, see, in terms of character defects.